Thank you very much for that introduction. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends, our beautiful European continent is facing the rise of a new empire. An empire ruled by bureaucrats in Brussels, with the proud capitals of our nation states reduced to little more than administrative centers for the provinces of the European Union. Before I continue, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for creating an international podium during which politicians, scholars, and those with a love for sovereignty can discuss the superiority of our nation states over the bureaucracy of Brussels. A place where we can share ideas for the future and try to build a network of parties that respect the diversity of cultures and languages in Europe while passionately defending their own. A place for those of us who understand that in the European context, one size fits none. One only has to visit the buildings of power of the European Union in Brussels to understand what is at stake. The buildings lack any aesthetics, have no discernible identity, no soul, and no beauty. This is intentional, and it's also symbolic for the ultimate goal of the European Union, to strip nation states of their unique histories, of their languages, and of their cultures, to uproot citizens from any sense of home in order to erase any sentiment that our sovereignty is worth fighting for. Local identities are to be replaced with a contrived hegemonic narrative of a European identity founded on the imagined superiority of the EU over nation states in providing peace, safety, and a stable future. However, this pipe dream of a singular European identity comes at a price. And it is up to the citizens of our once proud nation states to decide whether it is a price that we are willing to pay. We need to decide whether we are going to abandon hope and leave, or whether we are ready to dig a trench and fight for liberty in Europe. For the price that the EU is asking of us is our freedom. While a hegemonic European identity might still take years to achieve and to forge, the speed of the centralization of power to Brussels has increased at a rapid pace over the past 2 years under the guise of a so-called pandemic. A narrow window of opportunity, as it was called by Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, an organization that has been under the increasing influence of the Chinese Communist Party and that is seeking to roll out a neo-communist agenda across the world through its Great Reset. Under the guise of a contrived and permanent state of crisis, like COVID and climate change, it seeks a total transfer of power from citizens to a technocratic elite. It seeks a world in which the state will monitor and control every aspect of their citizens' lives. It is a world without democracy, a world without privacy. For the EU, this pandemic was an opportunity, the perfect excuse to enact a plan in line with the Great Reset, a plan that they had been working on for many years. It is the European digital identity, a step towards superseding the national governments in defending the interests of citizens into a European whole. In response to this pandemic, and under the guise of purportedly protecting the safety of their citizens, the European Union rolled out the European Green Pass and individual member states to QR codes. Only with this code, in some countries that was only obtainable through vaccination, were citizens allowed to take part in social life. But as it turned out, these QR codes had little to no effect on stopping the transmission of COVID-19. So why were countries holding on to these QR codes if it was not in the interest of public health? The European Council answered this question themselves, and they said that the design of the Green Pass was merely a first version of what will become a complete digital wallet. In the next few months, they will be working with member states to further roll out this app. The European Green Pass has therefore been little more than a first step to developing a European digital ID. But what exactly is this digital ID? Now, a digital identity document is a central location for storing all kinds of personal data, which can be used by governments and companies and can trace every internet user to only one person. This means the end of online anonymity. And this is also the loss of privacy. It means that every payment, every comment, every tweet, and even your medical details can be linked to you as a person. It also means that companies can set conditions for access to their services based on this data. The Green Pass and the QR codes, which were implemented in countries across Europe, gave you access to social life only if you were vaccinated or, as happened more recently, if you have received the booster shot. Your freedom, therefore, depended on your compliance, on your good behavior. But this system is not new, and it already exists in China. Not only did we import their lockdowns, we are now also bringing the Chinese social credit system to Europe. Depending on their good behavior, and therefore their social credit score, Chinese citizens have access to things like public transport and restaurants. Their score also determines whether they can go on holiday or not, and which facilities they have access to. However, behavior considered to be bad by the state is punished by denying access to such things. Even their social contacts can influence whether the government deems them to be good or bad citizens. China is, of course, much further ahead in the implementation of this system. Yet experts warn that a digital ID will make a similar social credit system possible in Europe. You only have to look at the European Green Deal to understand that a personal carbon dioxide budget linked to your digital ID is a likely scenario in Europe. It will decide whether you can still buy meat or how far you can travel by plane or by car, depending on how much of your budget you have left. This is a terrifying mechanism of control that forces compliance of citizens. But now that countries across Europe are almost uniformly letting go of strict COVID measures and are putting the controversial QR codes on hold, the EU is rolling out the European Digital ID. Lockdowns and the Green Pass were merely a trial run that has shown the global elite that even the free nations of Europe were willing to give up their freedom for the impression of safety. It was never about COVID. It was about setting up a permanent digital infrastructure for a central digital identity. Under the pretense of public health, we are being herded towards a terrifying system of control that will mean an end to our individual freedoms as we have come to know them. The challenge that each of us faces in our home countries to fight off the transfer of national sovereignty to Brussels and to protect our citizens against this neo-communist agenda being rolled out under the guise of the Great Reset is greater than ever before. The European digital identity is a supranational tool to control and monitor the behavior of citizens across Europe. What we are currently seeing in Canada, with the freezing of bank accounts of those protesting or sympathetic towards the protests against the inhumane COVID measures implemented by the regime of Justin Trudeau, will also happen in Europe if we don't take a stand. With this digital ID, bank accounts could be frozen for simply placing a tweet that counters the dominant narrative. Our states will be failing to protect their own citizens against an increasingly powerful Brussels if this plan is rolled out across Europe without any resistance. Honored guests, we all have different interests and priorities, that much is clear. Yet we all have a love for freedom, the freedom to pursue our own interests as sovereign nation states. We also seek to protect the interests of our citizens and their individual liberties against a bureaucratic elite that seeks to reduce the diversity of European nations into a controllable, homogeneous mass. All in the name of control, all in the name of the Great Reset. Let us ensure that we resist this globalist agenda in Europe, that we stand firm to protect the sovereignty of our nation state and protect our citizens. This is our duty as freedom-loving parties. And I wish you all strength and steadfastness as we enter an era of rapid change and constantly changing narratives that seek to confuse and dislodge. Stay true to your principles and your nations. Stay true to defending liberty. Thank you.